This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment coach for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now here is today's episode. Episode 120. Before I dive into today's episode, I've got a couple questions for you. Do you often find yourself working all hours of the day, especially as an entrepreneur? Maybe you're working late evenings into the weekend, or maybe you're just kind of working a lot in your corporate job. If you're finding out that you also really struggle with taking on new things, trying out new things for fear of what other people think of you, you just may be a perfectionist. To find out some signs, 10 of them specifically, that you may be a perfectionist and what you can do differently, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist. Now here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Oh, I am excited about this upcoming conversation because this is on a topic or topics that I know we've talked about before on the show, but this is another guest who really dives deep into this, and so I cannot wait to introduce her. My guest today is Lynn Whitbeck, and she is the founder and CEO of Petite to Queen and Future Forward Sales. She helps the world by providing sales and leadership training programs to achieve more faster. Lynn is the catalyst for businesses to turn their sales teams into revenue-generating champions. With her crew, Lynn's strategic sales training program helps organizations achieve the expanded revenue and business growth that happens when their sales team learn to capitalize on every lead. The powerful live training delivers immediate results and easy shifts, shortens the sales cycle, builds stronger relationships, and closes more sales. Lynn is the co-author of the highly regarded book, Practical Wisdoms at Work. This quick read guide provides insights to navigate situations, challenges, and opportunities that arise every day in business, teaching you how to broaden your career with skills that will set you apart. Lynn has been featured in USA Today, HuffPost, Chicago Tribune, and more. Well, welcome to the show, Lynn, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Well, Nicole, I am really excited to have this conversation as well. This is going to be a lot of fun because, sales is leadership, and it's something that is very near and dear to my heart, especially for the women out there in the audience.
Beautiful. Well, share a little bit with the ladies who are listening, because as I was saying earlier before I hit record, I know some of my listeners are entrepreneurs and some of them are corporate. So share a little bit of what really got you into this work, because I know your passion's there. I hear it in your voice.
Yeah, so I started in sales after graduate school, and it was just one of those things that really just was a good fit for me because my core value is to help others and to be of service. And in sales, you can do that every day by taking just one piece off of someone else's desk so they don't even have to think about it or deal with it. And you've made their world a little better. And so throughout my career, as I just, I did good. Climbed the corporate ladder. Eventually, as an executive, I was being flown literally all over the world to close multi-million-dollar deals, which was amazing. And, throughout that experience, though, it really did come down to all of the sales experience that's leadership. Because you have to learn how to do all these things and how does that translate? I'm a real believer that all women should have sales training, whether you're in a corporate job or you're running your own business and you have your own startup, or you're just doing the same thing and climbing that corporate ladder. It's going to help you out so much because you deal with all of it, having difficult conversations, negotiating, working with diverse individuals who have very different point of views. And then how do you, really get other people involved with your ideas, whether it's selling them a product or service or, moving up a program. that
Mm-hmm.
an initiative, how you're going to manage it, how you're going to execute on it. All of those things come out of that experience.
I'm going to pause you for just a second, Lynn. You are the first guest who's really defined how sales could actually be used in so many different ways. Most of the time, well, what I'm used to hearing, right? We've talked on my show before about, yes, selling is serving. And if you are, like if you're a coach, you're a therapist, you're selling a product, you're constantly doing sales, whether you admit it or you don't. But I just loved how you said, one, to have that background or have that training also is part of that can help you become a better leader. But it's also how you can, hold your space in difficult conversations, really get people to kind of hear what it is you want to show them about maybe a new project, learning how to work with people from diverse backgrounds and everything. It's so much more encompassing. And I love your definition of that.
Well, it really is. It's a life skill,
Mm-hmm.
every aspect of it. And it does. It goes into every part of your life too, even down to negotiating which show you're going to watch tonight on Netflix.
Good point. And there is a lot of that going on these days. Yeah. Well, so share just a little bit more then how you're defining leadership then. So you shared really how sales can help with leadership. How else do you define leadership?
Yeah. So I believe that leadership is born out of our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, there's really 4 core components to be an effective leader.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is that ability to create a culture and an environment that enables a team to thrive.
Yes.
And so whether you're in the corporate world or you're running your own business, and maybe you don't have any direct employees yet,
Mm-hmm.
but you have team members that you work with, it's so
Mm-hmm.
important that you create that culture.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that you have to have the ability to view your organization as a whole and in its parts.
Say more about that.
Because, well, this is the thing. When you work with different departments within an organization, so we've all been there in the corporate world. So you're dealing with finance and you're dealing with HR and you're dealing with IT. They're all coming at something very differently. And you really have to understand their why. So why is finance obsessing on this thing? Why is IT obsessing on something totally different? And then HR, their number one priority is yet another, different thing. And so when you can view those things in their parts, that helps you then bring everyone together, by, with that inclusion of their viewpoints have value, they're important. But how do you put those all together and help everyone recognize that their input is important? And where do you find the common ground with those 3 departments in this case, so that you can move an initiative, an objective forward? And so even when you're running your own business, like you and I run our own business, I only have 5 employees. I'll say only, but those team members, we have to do the same thing. We're running our own little mini silos, right? And they have unique life experiences and perspectives. And as a leader, that really helps you see around your own paradigm. And that's really my number 3 is you need to actively seek alternate viewpoints. Because you need that diversity of opinion.
Yes.
So that you can really make the best decisions. If you make decisions only within your own paradigm and your own tiny world, not going to be that successful, unfortunately.
And I have read something before. Part of my Myers-Briggs type, I have this tendency where I'm like, ooh, I've got a really rich inner world and I'm going through things and I can synthesize information, but I can do something very similar to what you're talking about, is not necessarily seek too much outside, because sometimes I get too distracted when I do that, but I can get stuck and kind of get tunnel vision. And if somebody gives me some feedback, I'm like, no, I've already made my mind up on this thing. But yet it may be a key factor in what that result may be if I don't use what it is they're actually suggesting.
You're right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Having that ability to really hear
Yeah.
that and then process it is very important. And
Hmm.
and I would say my fourth thing, that fourth core essential is
Hmm.
really to have a robust power skill set. And obviously in sales, you're going to get, if you go through sales, you're going to have
Hmm.
a robust power skill set.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Those really, that's like the stable foundation, right? Like the four legs on a chair, saying if you've got those four pillars, then you're in good shape then. I love that. Well, I know one thing you and I have talked about and what you talk about quite a bit as well is women so often, and I think it's a human thing too, but we have so much self-doubt that begins to creep up. And that may be because you're going after your own goals, you're going after something new. Maybe you want to pitch a project there at where you work, or you're going after this promotion that you're going for, or you want to switch directions or something, I don't know, in your own business. But self-doubt starts to creep up and really can paralyze women. So you've got this beautiful way of like leveraging self-doubt to help make your best decisions. So share a little bit more, like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and to your point, absolutely. Self-doubt can either hold us back, or it
Hmm.
can enable us to pivot. And I think to start this conversation, you have to sort of understand where it's coming from, because we all have ongoing mental chatter and spontaneous thoughts. They're just
Yes.
there. And honestly, they're mostly negative. And that's this whole primal survival instinct. That's why we have this predominantly negative, spontaneous thought patterns. It's not that there's anything, all of us have it.
Right.
It's literally built into our DNA. And
Yep.
so, one of the things is to start with is to ask, what is that driver? When you
Mm.
start to notice this pattern of negative thoughts on something, and then why do you feel this way?
Hmm.
Because when you spend a little bit of time on introspection, it's going to really help you identify um, what's going on.
Hmm.
It could go back to your childhood of some kind of rejection, so you have this fear of rejection, and
Hmm.
that's holding you back. And so
Yep.
then when you bring it to light, one of the most beautiful things is what hides in the shadows. It disperses when you shine light on it.
Yes.
And so that's why it's really important to go through this introspection and really identify the types of ongoing spontaneous negative thoughts that you have,
Hmm.
because you can replace these negative thoughts with positive thinking.
Yep.
And I do have a technique that you can use. It's really 3 steps. It's to pause, frame, and affirm.
Ooh,
And so
nice.
what you do is that when you're feeling this self-doubt, pause. I mean, recognize it, that, okay, I'm feeling this self-doubt. I'm putting up barriers. I'm saying, no, I can't. So you want to then identify the source and the context. Okay, so, and I'm going to give you an example.
Hmm.
So when I started this type of business, I was doing some things that I've never done before, like all of the video, Facebook lives, Instagram lives, LinkedIn lives,
Uh-huh.
videos for YouTube. I mean, all this live content, right? And
Yep.
the first thing and also recorded content. And the
Hmm.
first thing I said to myself was that I'm not an actress. I can't do this.
Oh, wow.
And so then I had to take a moment and I said, wait a minute. Because I recognized it. Why am I
Yeah.
saying this?
Yeah.
Why am I saying I can't do this? Well, it's because I've never done it.
Hmm.
Okay, well, this is a skill. This is a
Yes.
skill I can learn. And maybe I'm never going to be brilliant at it, but it's just like anything else. I can
Uh-huh.
learn how to do this. And you know what? I may not do very well initially, but every time I keep trying, I'm going to get a little better. And I'll have to say, my very first guest podcast was terrible the first half, until I sort of got into my own like comfort zone. But
Hmm.
the next one I did was like 100 times better, and then I
Hmm.
just got better and better. So the thing is that I had to recognize what was that fear, and
Yeah.
that I gave myself permission to fail.
Yep.
So identify that source and context. Okay. And then you're going to reframe that situation just like I did. It's
Hmm.
like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I can learn.
Hmm.
And the other thing is, when you feel this self doubt, I did that same thing. I went through that. Is this something because sometimes self-doubt serves a purpose.
Yeah.
It's there to warn us.
Yep.
And we need to listen to that. So, when you go to that frame, you're framing it. Is this something that is actually a risk that I need to really evaluate? Or is it something that, yes, it's a risk, but it's a low level. So what's the worst thing that can happen if I fail on my first guest podcast? Well, maybe not that many people listen or click through to find out more about me. That's the worst thing that can happen. But the best thing that can happen is that I can learn from that, and maybe a couple people will click through.
Yep.
What's most likely to happen is I'll do okay. I'll get through it. And because I've done it, I've now taken a real whack at that fear and that self-doubt so that I can do better the next time. So, when you walk through that piece, and then once you've been able to frame that and you've identified, is it a real risk? Is it something that I shouldn't do? Or is it something that's, what are the fears and they're holding me back? And you've reframed that now and you decide to move forward. I want you to visualize success. And you can do that with an affirmation. So even to myself telling me I couldn't do these things, I recognize, well, this is a skill that I have to learn. And what are some things that I can do to help me learn this skill? And I wrote myself out an affirmation that I started saying every morning as soon as I got up. That was, this is, I'm learning a new skill, which is to do live video and recorded video shows and to speak authentically. And I'm learning this every day. So I sort of funny. I actually don't remember what the affirmation was, because once I've done them out, for me, they work so quickly. Usually within about 10 days, I don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Some people, it's 20 to 30 days. I will tell you, there's one I use every single day. And that is, I wake up and I say, there are so many things I get to do today.
Oh, I love it.
And I do that every day still, because it frames my morning, it frames my day in positivity. And I start it with that, because I used to do this, so much I have to do today. I just feel, so instead I reframed it for myself. And I found that it's been so empowering that I can really step into myself every morning when I say that. So I still do.
I love it.
But those things will really help you, that 3-step process, when you're looking at, this self-doubt, and it's just, it's got its grip on you.
Yeah. Well, if the ladies have been following me at any length of time, I start out this whole podcast. I think episode number 1 is all about self-reflection. I'm such a huge proponent. You've got to get quiet to get back to yourself, to really listen to your own inner wisdom. And like you're saying too, a lot of these things that we learn, whether it's working through the corporate ladder, like moving up in the ranks, or you're building your own business, or, growing your business, there's still skills that you're building and you continue to evolve, but it's not allowing the fears, the worries, the self-doubt to keep you stuck, or to keep you hidden, or to keep playing small, because there's stories in your mind. There's stories you've been told, stories you've heard through your culture, whatever. And it's like you're bigger than those stories. Yeah. So I love that. All right. You also have something that you work with people on too, and what you've talked about as well on other shows. You talk about manage up. And what do you even mean by that? Manage up.
All right. So this is a really core principle for all of you who are trying to climb that corporate ladder. Managing up is how to effectively deal with your manager. I mean, in a nutshell. And so what is that? I believe there's really 7 habits that you need. And the first habit is responsibility and heavy lifting. So what I mean by that is you have to hold accountability within your own circle of work. Okay. A. And then B, you need to take on things so that you're not impacting your manager when it's not necessary. There's all kinds of things that we can do, which I call doing the heavy lifting. So as an example, back when, I was selling transactional work and I'd have a client, place an order and they'd say, well, I want you to ship it to Topeka.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, okay, well, Topeka where? And so then I would look
Mm-hmm.
and I'd go, okay, well, wait, they've got a warehouse and they've got an office setting. They've got two different addresses for two different locations in Topeka. And so I figured that out. And then I email them back and then I clarify,
Yep.
So do you want it to go to the warehouse at 666, Mockingbird Lane,
Yep.
or do you want it to go to the office at 665? I don't know, Affirmation Lane, right?
Yep.
But what I did is I did the heavy lifting so they could respond back to me with a real simple answer, and they don't have to look up the address or figure it out. They're able to just say, so I did that heavy lifting and made that super simple. But you can do it in so many other ways. Like you can get the information yourself instead of bothering them, right?
Yep.
So what you want to do is do that heavy lifting. And then when you do have a question, you come at it from a way that makes it really simple for them to answer.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing about heavy lifting and working with your managers, and we've been talking about it a lot, but it's awareness and perception.
Yeah.
So what I want you to keep in mind is that you need that there are influences that your manager has. That include their leadership style, who they report to, and who has their ear. Okay. So that's part of that. And also part of that awareness is that your boss has different priorities. Okay. And they also have information that you're not privy to.
Yeah.
So it's really important for you to shift your perception to your managers and think about it. Think, in sales, I call it think like a customer, but here, think like the manager, so that you approach it from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's going to help you out tremendously. And then when you do want to talk with them, timing is so important. And that's to pick your spot. Because I can tell you, the managers are busy and they're distracted. So one of the tricks that I've used over the years is I will say, hey, I know you're busy, but I'd like 2 minutes to show you how I can save, or we can save 10 hours of production and reduce our resources on this project. Okay, what did I just do? I just gave them, which is number 5, their pitch, right? A pitch. And I gave them value. And they're going to say, okay, I want to hear this. Right. And maybe I've had them say, walk with me to the car. I've got to get to this appointment, but I want to hear more. And so we walk to the car, and I tell them my idea. Right. So when you do that, and then you're pitching this value, you're thinking like the boss, and how does your idea benefit them?
Yeah.
So they can what? So they can save some money, so they can get this project off the ground more smoothly. There are lots of benefits that they're going to receive, but frame that once again from their perspective. And then when you do that and you come to talk to them, my number 6 is you want to come with facts and figures. Okay. You're going to make a business case, and you're going to back up those ideas with data and benefits. Once again, these benefits that are for the team, the department, and the company. And then my last tip is so important. I mean, this is with all your interpersonal relationships. It's nonverbal communication. And I know this is not video, so you can't see me, but you can still hear my voice, because your tone, your manner, and your words, all of that body language, they can make or break your success. Okay.
Yes, they can.
And your attitude and approach, it creates an impression in your manager's mind and in others people's mind. And they either are going to tune in or tune out. So you want to make sure that you bring that to the table. And so for ladies, I want you right now, I want you to sit up straight. I want you to roll your shoulders back. Because when we do that very action, bring our chin up level to the desk.
Yeah.
Okay. That physical action allows you right now to stand or sit in your own power.
Yeah, Amy Cuddy, I did another episode on her book Presence, and she talks quite a bit about that, right? Where men will often, they come in, their shoulders are back, or they kind of have their legs spread out, or you can do your hands on your hips, kind of the old Wonder Woman type of pose. All of those, right? Though, but they're power poses, and it will shift your emotions, which then shifts your thinking, which is more of the psychologist James Hillman, I believe, where it goes backward. Most people think, you have your thoughts and you have your emotions because there's an event, then you have your thoughts and you have your emotions and you have your behaviors. Well, you can do it through body language first. When you feel empowered, it automatically begins to shift things. So yeah, it's really important. It's not coming into your manager like with your eyes downcast and you're ready to pitch it. It's just
and
look
you're
them in the
mumbling your
eyes.
words,
Yeah. It's like be assertive. It's not aggressive like, hey, you got to listen to me. It's like, hey, I have this idea. I'd like to share it with you. When would be a good time? And like you said, they're like, walk with me. I'm going to the car. Okay, poop, it's in motion.
Yeah, but you got to give them that high pitch, that pitch of what the idea is. And why it's, it's literally a 1-minute pitch.
Yeah.
So that's why you want the time. And then they're going to say, well, let's talk about it right now. I mean, this sounds important. I want to hear more.
I love it. Because I remember when I was an accountant many, 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 many moons ago, one of my bosses at that time, he came to me, when I went into his office for something. He's like, all right, Nicole, what's the solution? Because I would just go in there with the problem. I'm like, what do you mean? What's the solution? I don't know. I'm asking you. He's like, no. He's like, when you come in, I want you to come in with some solutions. And it was a different way of thinking for me, because at that time where I was at in my career was, way at the bottom level of it. I'm like, I had not ever had a mentor say anything like that. So I began to shift how I approach things. And then when I had questions, it was like, here's a solution I'm thinking of, and then I had to get feedback to make sure I could go ahead and implement it, type of thing. But yeah, I love it. You also, when you're mentoring the women that you're working with, one, I know you're definitely helping them learn, get their sales skills really going, but you also help them really develop confidence. So we also, we had talked about self-doubt can kind of get in our way. How do you help them really build that confidence then?
Yeah, and absolutely going through that process of the fears that are holding you back. I mean, we start our sales training programs with that first step of really that introspection, because it is so important.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things, and I said this before, but you must give yourself permission to fail.
Yeah.
Okay. And in addition, when we're framing this, so many women and men, suffer from perfectionism.
Yep.
And, you're not alone. I mean, I just said so many people have this. I mean, you're in really good company.
And I've had multiple episodes on perfectionism. So
yeah. And that's, one of the things that really, in a completely different environment, helped me put my pin in it, literally put my pin in it, because I took a quilting class. And when I was taking this quilting class and I'd made a mistake on something, the instructor said, well, that's going to be your humility square. And I went, what?
Oh, wow.
And she said, that's, and sometimes it's purposefully done, but there's always a humility square on a quilt, because it shows that we're not perfect. We're human. We make mistakes. And it was just so profound to me, because I went, wow. Okay, so in other words, I don't have to be perfect, because I'm a human. I'm going to make mistakes. And I can, learn from those mistakes, of course. And that was one of the things too, that within sales, that I would often, take that moment, like you lose a big deal. And it's like, okay, what's the postmortem? How did this happen? And it wasn't for blame or anything else, but it was really about how can we do better next time? What did we miss? What signals didn't we pick up? How did we not take into account what was going on in the customer space? And through that process of not treating it like some abysmal failure, but instead an opportunity to learn and grow, we were really able to then, make an adjustment, make some refinements, and do better next time, right? So I think that one of the key things is that when we're really talking about, developing your confidence, It's that to recognize, that what's the worst thing that can happen, what's
Mm-hmm.
the best thing that can happen, what's most likely to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really acknowledging that if if it doesn't work out, you're not going to get fired,
Right.
you're not going to never get a promotion. It's really about how do you also respond to it after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
not whining about it or lamenting about it, but taking proactive steps
Yeah.
to do better. And those things are very apparent. Once again, that's just a reflection of your attitude and sort of owning that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one way also that we have more confidence, because we know that we can learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's something that will go on throughout our careers. And it's how we started out. I mean, think of it as the little baby.
Yep.
The little baby who has to learn how to roll over, and then it has to learn how to get itself up on its knees, and how many times does that little baby fall when they're cruising and they're trying, and then they're finally walking like Frankenstein, right?
Yep.
But they just keep getting back up.
Well, and the other thing too that I will say to the women that I work with, and I know I've said it on my show too, failure is an event. It's not you, the person. So I love the reframes that you're talking about too. It's like, feel your feelings, whatever comes up, the disappointment, the frustration, irritation, whatever, feel that, but then pause and look at like, okay, yeah, what were the opportunities in this? What did I learn about this? What part of the customer's world did I miss? What could I do differently next time? Because that is how we learn and grow, is by getting curious about what had just occurred versus like, oh man, I'm never going to be able to make this happen. I'm never going to be able to grow my business. I'm never going to be able to get that, promotion. It's like, well, if you keep saying that, you're right, you won't.
Yeah. It's amazing how much we learn from failure. It's just tremendous amount. And the thing is that I don't want people to fail, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
we've got to open our minds to what we get instead.
Right.
I want people to stop thinking about what they gave up, but
Yeah.
instead think about what you're getting in return,
Yep.
from that occurrence, as you said, that event.
Yeah.
And when you reframe it, then you're able to really dive in and make that next big leap.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because that's just it, my two extremes that I'll give people, if they're facing some sort of fear or they're going after something, I'm like, if they messed up or something didn't work out, I'm like, did anybody die from it? No. Did the world blow up? No. And I'm like, okay, then I think we're all right. Because it's like there's other things that are actually going on that do cause those things, and you did not do that. So it's okay. Take the next step forward.
Right.
Yeah. The last question I want to ask you, then I'm going to pivot it just a second here. You also talk about some other skills, and you've listed like, what are the 3 most important skills women need to learn so they can have the career that they really want? I know you've talked a lot about, the sales piece of it, but what else you got going that you say women need?
Yeah. Well, we actually have on our podcast, we have an 11-part performance power skills series.
Oh.
But I'm going to talk about my top 3,
Okay.
which are so important right now. And that's resilience, agility, and problem solving.
Oh, yeah.
And all of these are really core to not only managing up, which we talked about, but also boosting your career, growing your business, and living your life.
Yeah.
So, right now we're living through a really tense time. And I know that before the show, we talked about that. So resilience is something, once again, it's a skill you can learn.
Yep.
And that's one of the cool things about the Power Skill series that we do, is that we go over how you can learn this skill and then how you can practice it and hone it. So it's not just talking about resilience. It's really getting into how can you learn this?
Yeah.
And because you know what? It's not going to happen overnight. All the skills that we acquire, they take time. But resilience is so important right now. And I started to go down that road. But, when the whole COVID thing hit in March, I felt truly paralyzed and out of control. And the New York Times put out a pattern for making masks. And I just went, I can make a mask. I mean, I like to sew.
Uh-huh.
obviously I told you about my quilting thing.
Yep.
I then I can do this. And it was like, I just started making masks, and it's like, okay, because it gave me this one piece, something I could do that could make a difference. Not
Mm-hmm.
and so I could make these masks, and show my love and care and appreciation for all my family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my community, I ended up making over 500 masks,
I love
and it
it.
was just like crazy. And then I took a break, and
Mm-hmm.
then I started making them again for the fall. We made fall and Halloween masks. I'm
Mm-hmm.
in a little bit of a pause now. I'm not going to make holiday masks, but it gave me that little. For me, I don't like to feel out of control. I know
Mm-hmm.
that about myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it gave me the ability to do something that gave me that feeling that I had some control, but that I was also doing something proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, none of those things. So there's not really, but this was the one way that I could
Yeah.
help, that I could make a difference in some small, teeny weeny way. And I just have to say, imagine if all of us made a little bit of a teeny weeny difference every day for others,
Mm-hmm.
what a world we would live in, you know?
Yeah, and I like that part of it. It was one, you gained your own sense of kind of control, like you said, which is part of managing anxiety and fears. But two, it also became like a self-care practice for you in that. So yes, it was definitely giving back, but you weren't doing it because they were asking for it. You were doing it because like, no, this is what is helping me stay very grounded. And that's what I need right now in this moment. So what other sort of self-care things do you do these days with everything still kind of being up in the air and the pandemic is still going on and no end in sight? And it is what it is. I mean, we humans so want to have control, which is nothing but an illusion. So what are some of the other things you do for self-care?
Yeah. So, I mean, my other power skills of agility and problem solving certainly, come in there,
Uh-huh.
so for agility, you think about it, you just, you need to be able to pivot
Yep.
and to do other things. And one thing I do for self-care, it's going to sound really, really funny, is Pokemon Go. I'm a
Oh,
pretty hardcore
fun.
Pokemon Go player.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I used to love was we had to have the community days, and I would meet up with a bunch of the other people who played Pokemon. We'd walk the trail. We have
Uh-huh.
these wonderful walking trails in the town I live in, with all the Pokestops, and we're catching the little critters. But we'd be walking and talking. We'd say hi to everybody that we saw. Sometimes our group would sort of change who was walking with whom, and it was really wonderful. And so, of course, we sort of lost that.
Hmm.
Um, but we can still, they changed the game a little so that now you can invite your friends to raids.
Oh,
And
cool.
people who don't play Pokemon Go, this is going to just sound crazy, so but it was a really it's something that I still do, and it still gives me and you have different events that will go on, even though they're virtual events, but you can connect with people on Discord, and you can put these raid teams together, and then you can plan to do them. It's really still it's just different, and then you communicate with them.
It's very community based, though. I
Yes,
mean,
on
yeah.
Discord, and we talk, and a few of them I've gotten to know so well that we'll send each other text messages.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's just sort of a fun thing. So that's one thing that I've done. And then, when we talk about my other power skill of problem solving, it's that certainly during this time of really when you look at self-care, is
Hmm.
what are some of the other things that we can do? And we definitely have this big problem that with the COVID. And then it's like, well, how can I take care of myself and feel safe? And
Hmm.
so one thing that I've done is, I'm pretty specific about the stores that I'll shop at, because I've seen from the beginning their care and their attention. And so I feel better going there. And so that
Hmm.
takes away some anxiety, because the self-care. Some of the small businesses in our area, they
Hmm.
did such an amazing job about keeping us informed, like enabling us to still shop there
Yep.
when they had to be closed.
Yeah.
And instead, they quickly put up sort of the bare minimum of websites, but you could tell them what you wanted, and they
Hmm.
would pick it, and then they'd bring it out to your car.
Nice.
And so they were really using that agility and resilience to think on their feet,
Yeah.
to find an alternate way so that they could stay in business, right? And then I can help them.
Yep.
So once again, there's that self-care of knowing that not only am I helping myself by getting these things that were important, but I could help others. So all of those things sort of go into it. And there's just a lot of things. I mean, I have this stress relief tea that I'll drink that is really lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that that will also help me, sort of chill out. I'll
Yep.
watch things like if I'm feeling really stressed. I don't know if anybody remembers the Winnie the Pooh series that Disney had. It's now
Oh.
on Disney Plus.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, I will switch if I've been watching the news. We
Uh-huh.
talked about that earlier.
Yep.
I'll go to the Disney Channel and I'll watch a Winnie the Pooh.
Yep.
And I'm just singing along.
Yep.
Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh. And it lightens my heart. I just
Yeah.
feel these were things I did with my daughter as a child. I smile through the episode. I just feel better. And I'm able to go to sleep
Mm-hmm.
with a totally different mindset. And
Yeah.
so that little bit of a break. And there's a lot of things like that, especially now we have access to all these different things
Mm-hmm.
that can really help. Once again, it's that reframing.
Yeah. And if you need to, I know for some of my listeners, right, they're highly sensitive. And if their nervous system is already kind of overstimulated due to being on computers and all of that stuff or watching technology, sometimes just turn it off and go step outside if you're able to do that, or look at some nature pictures, or just pause and take some breaths, because all of it is about getting yourself back into your body and calming the nervous system so that it's not continuously overstimulated. But I loved going back to those Winnie the Pooh series. This brings you back with raising your daughter and just feels good.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I will do that myself. I'm really lucky. I live really close to a park. And even if I'm feeling stressed at work, I'm trying to think through something, I'll drive over there. It's 5 minutes away. And they have this really nice trail through, like the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of take my time and I'm breathing, but I'm also letting thoughts sort of flow about whatever it is that's sort of going on. And so that I can calm down, that I can sort of process it. I'm slowing my speaking down while I'm talking about it, but I come back completely refreshed. So it's like a 30-minute bookend, 5 minutes to get there, 20-minute walk, 5-minute back. And it really helps me reframe the rest of my day.
Uh-huh.
And I totally love going out. You're right. Just standing outside in the evening and listening to the rustles and the wind and, smelling the crisp air, as long as we're not in the fire zone at this point. We're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. No, nature really is. And you just named it too. Yeah. Those who are in the fires, they're missing out on that because they're not able to do that. But it's really, nature is a calming balm for so many people. And there's tons of research on it. So that's great. You've got something really close to home. You can just pop over there and, like you said, step away from whatever's going on, the problem you're trying to resolve, and go like, oh yeah, let that just bubble and something will come up. So I love it. Well, Lynn, I just want to say thank you so much for being on today. There was so many great tidbits that you were giving and great steps. And ladies, I'll have this all in the show notes, along with Lynn's two different websites that she has and then her social media that she has. All of that will be on the show notes that you can find out more information on Lynn and her company. So just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing, and so really empowering women to feel confident in themselves, whether it's moving up through the corporate ladder or, really feeling good about their business, and just knowing that sales is about service, but so much more. I just love it.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you. Thank you. I loved talking with you. This has been so amazing. I already feel like we're BFFs.
I love it.
I can't wait to connect again.
Thank you for listening. Wondering if perfectionism is holding you back in your business or life, or just maybe it's impacting all of your relationships? Well, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist and receive your 10 signs you might be a perfectionist today. Till then, take care.